Again, good morning. As we go to the Sikha of the Rebbe on this week's Parsha, the lesson the Rebbe learns out of this week's Parsha. Many things have understood that it's, as I said, it's a Parsha that is loaded with so many things in the Parsha. It's a Parsha that has many teachings in it. There's many miracles that happen in this week's Parsha, from the beginning until the end. So we start off with the going out of Egypt, Beshalach, which is an unbelievable miracle. Not only the Jewish people left Egypt, but Beshalach, the Pharaoh sends them out of Egypt to the crossing of the sea. Self-understood, the unbelievable miracle, Bizas Hayam, all that they got from the sea. Story of the water, and having food, and the man, the bread from heaven. One after the other, quail that was given to the Jewish nation, one thing after the other. The unbelievable miracles are the one after the other happening in this week's portion. One thing after the other. And then we come to the end of the portion. The end of the portion, text number 1 on page 56 in this book. And we end off the portion with the next enemy of the Jewish nation, the Amalekites. Amalek came, as the verse says in verse number 8, Amalek came and made war with Israel in Rephidim. Moses says to Joshua, come, choose men, for us, and go out to fight with Amalek. Tomorrow, I'll be standing on the top of the hill. The staff of God will be in my hand. Joshua did as Moshe said to him, and he fought with Amalek. Moses and Aaron and Hur ascended the top of the hill. And it was that when Moshe Rabbeinu raised his hand, Israel prevailed. And when he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. Moshe's hands grew heavy, and they took a stone and placed it beneath him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on this side and the other on that side, and his hands were steady until the setting of the sun. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people by the sword. That's the story. That's how we end the Parsha. Amalek. We read this also on Purim in the morning when we read the Shabbat before Purim, and we read it on Purim itself. The remembrance of destruction of Amalek. Story of the war with Amalek. Now it's interesting. This war, out of all the wars that the Jewish people went through in the Torah, you find this situation. You find two situations. Number one, that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't go out to war. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu ask Joshua to go out to war? Number one. And number two is, why suddenly do we have that when he lifts up his hands, they are losing. When he puts down his hand, when he lifts his hand, they are winning. When he puts down the hand, they are losing. So the Mishnah, the Gemara in Mishnah and Rosh Hashanah says in text number 2, it was that when Moshe raised his hand, Israel prevailed. Did Moshe's hand make the war or break the war? What's the meaning? What's the simple meaning of the story? That when he lifted up his hand, they won the war. They were winning the war. When he lifted down his hand, he put down his hand, and his hands got weak. What is the meaning of this story? Of course not. That entire time that the Jewish people gaze upward, that's what the point of lifting up his hands. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted that the Jewish people should look to heavens and to look upwards. As long as they were looking up to heavens, that was his hands. His hands meant that to them to look up. As they were looking up to heavens, they were victorious. When they suddenly stopped looking up to heavens, they started looking downwards, they started to lose the war. So the Jewish people gaze up and bound their hearts to the Father in heaven, they prevailed. When they did not, they failed. So it's interesting. It's interesting that why is this reflected in Moshe Rabbeinu suddenly? In this war, he goes out, he decides not to send them to war, not to go out to war with them. he decides he's going to do this concept of lifting his hands, inspiring the Jews, and suddenly his hands become weak. Why does his hand become weak? Why suddenly his hands become weak? Why did? So Rashi says, Rashi is bothered by it, and he says, and Moshe's hands grew heavy, text number 3a. His hands grew heavy because of him not going to war. Because he shirked the mitzvah, appointed another to take his role. That's why his hands got heavy. His hands became heavy. So that means Moshe Rabbeinu should have gone out to war. When Amalek comes to fight with the Jews, suddenly Moshe sent somebody else. He should have said, I'm ready to go out to war. And because he didn't do that, Rashi says, he sent out Yeshua to war. That's why he was punished. That suddenly he wanted to inspire the Jews with his hands so that they should look to heavens, and suddenly his hands got heavy. His hands got extremely heavy. And the Rashi is based on a Mechilta in text number 3b. And Moshe's hands got heavy. Here we learn that one should never defer a mitzvah. For had Moshe not told Joshua, choose for us, he would not have incurred this suffering. It is said at that moment, Moshe's hands were heavy as if 2 jugs of water hung from them. So Moshe made a mistake, in essence. He made a mistake. He should have gone out to war.
Wait, Rabbi, is there somewhere in the Torah that it specifically says that Hashem told Moshe that he should go to war, and Moshe decided not to? Is there anywhere in the Torah that says that?
It doesn't make a difference if the Torah actually. Let's go to the Torah instead of guessing. Let us go to the Parsha. It doesn't bring down the whole statement. I think if you look at the words of the Torah, was Moshe commanded?
Yeah, was it?
No, it doesn't say that Moshe was commanded. You're right. It doesn't say over here that Moshe was commanded. It says,
so was it
Amalek v'yilachem im Yisrael b'refidim. That's what it says.
It's better that Ishi put his hands up. It's better because they look up at Hashem.
Yeah, but if there is a war, and the truth is, we know that you look in the next text number 4. Moshe Rabbeinu, be 40 years later, he's going to be dying. God says he's going to die. What does the Moshe Rabbeinu say? What is his prayer and his wish to God? What does he want from God? So look at text number 4. This is in Numbers. This is already 40 years later. Moshe spoke to God, saying, May God of the spirit of all flesh appoint a man over the congregation. What is the most important thing of this leader? One who will go before them. One who will come before them. One that will take them out and bring them in. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want a leader that's going to go out to war with them. He's not going to be a guy who's going to stay in his office and send out people to the war. No, I want a leader that's going to go out to war with the army. So you see that Moshe Rabbeinu himself demands by God such a leader. And here's the first war that the Jewish people are going out to. Moshe Rabbeinu walks away. He says, you know what? I'll pick my hands up. I'll sit in the office. I'll sit up top of a mountain. I'm not going to go out to war. And Rashi says, look at Rashi in text number 5 in that verse. Rashi says, who will go before them? Unlike the kings of nations who sit in their palace and send their soldiers to war, my successor ought to be as I have done when I fought against Sicha and Og. And the truth is, that when you go to the Bamidbar, later on, when there was other wars, Sichon and Og was a big war. What does it say? Moshe Rabbeinu, he's 120 years old already. He's almost before his death. He goes out to war. Not only does he go out to war, he's the one himself. With his own hands, he kills Og. And he's a giant. So suddenly, Moshe Rabbeinu got the picture that when you go out to war, when there's a war against the Jewish nation, you go yourself. What happened over here suddenly that he thought that, you know what? Choose Yeshua. What happened? What happened? How did this transform? How did Moshe Rabbeinu, in essence, make this kind of calculation that, you know what? This war, I'm going to stick out. Yeshua is going to go, and I'll step aside. And what's the lesson from it, in essence? That wants to know the main thing, what's the lesson? Now, self-understood, if we want to go naturally, we want to talk in a natural concept of who goes out to war, who doesn't go out to war. You can't have an 80-year-old man going out to war. Not even when he's 120, not when he's 80. Moshe Rabbeinu is 80 years old at this present time. So if you want to talk naturally, the simple thing is that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't go out to war. He might be the leader of the Jewish nation. He's 80 years old. What is he going out to war? He shouldn't be going out to war. Right? Even the Jewish law, you don't have to go. Jewish law, you tells later, is 60 years old. That is the maximum age, 60 years old.
I can't be inducted anymore.
No, because that's it. Me neither. That's over 60. It's time to not go out to war. You cannot go out to war. So you want to talk natural. We don't want to talk miracles. If we want to talk in a natural sequence of things, the answer is simple. You don't go out to war when you're 80 years old. But the problem is that we see later on Moshe Rabbeinu, 40 years later, goes out to war. And then he's 120 years old. We're a little older than 80 years old. And not only, what?
When he was in war?
Yeah, he was 120 years old.
Where is
Actually, he's not 120 because he died on his birthday. So he's 119 years old. I'm sorry.
Where is Refidim?
Refidim?
Yeah, where is
It's before Mount Sinai. The question is when Refidim, because the next stop that they went to was Mount Sinai. So we have to understand. So if we want to talk naturally, or we want to talk in a miraculous way. You want to talk about natural, that's one way of looking at things. And you want to talk about miracles, then you need to look at it in a different way. In essence, Moshe Rabbeinu, as a leader of the Jewish nation, had two options to look at something. To look at the situation in a natural kind of a way, the way normal battles and normal way a person should act in his life. So when he's 80 years old, it's not him to go to war. That's not the natural way of going to war. Even in Judaism, the man at 20 years old goes to war. That's the age, 20 to 60. But 80-year-olds don't go to war. And we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, as the verse text number 6 says, Moshe was 80 years old, and Adam was 83 years old when he came to the Pharaoh. So he's an elderly gentleman. And he doesn't belong in the aspect of war. When the Amalek came, it says, Vayachnu b'Refidim. Refidim. It's an interesting name. Every name in the Torah that the Torah gives, we know that it's not the real name. All these names, the desert had no names. There were no names in the desert. So you have the 42 camps in Mir Shem that we're going to learn the journey of the Jewish people in the desert. All these names later, Rashi says the majority of what's the meaning of these names. There's no names in the desert. It's It's no man's land. So there's no road signs. Rephidim is in 10 miles. These all names are names of situations that happened in the desert.
The Amalek people, they couldn't live in the desert.
Oh, they came from out of, they came to the desert. They came to the desert, correct. So let's go to the text. The entire congregation of children of Israel traveled from the wilderness of Zion. On their travels, at the word of God, they encamped in Rephidim. What happened in Rephidim, in this place? And there was no water for the people to drink. Right? This is the story we read today. They come to Rephidim, there's no water. What happens when there's no water? The people quarreled with Moshe. Give us water that we may drink. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu answer? Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test God? Why are you quarreling with me? Why are you arguing with me? Why are you challenging God? But the people were thirsty there for water. And the people complained against Moshe and said, why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and my children and my livestock with thirst? You have to all ask the question. If you read the Torah, you have to all ask the question. God is showing this nation miracle after miracle after miracle. One bigger miracle than the other. It's like going wild. Miracles that the Jewish people haven't seen since then. Physical miracles, one after the other. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was asking them, really. I mean,
What more do you need?
no, you're doubting. You're doubting God. You're doubting God. What's the matter with you people? Now, this is a dirty day. This is not a stupid people. That they can handle miracles like that means that they were extremely a very high kind of a people that can handle miracles. In essence, you're talking about people that live with miracles. Not only they saw a miracle, they're living every day with a miracle because they're having man coming down from heaven and quail coming at night, and the clouds are surrounding them, and all the other miracles that happen every single day in Egypt, in the desert. And then there was no water. And it's a problem. No water is a problem. We're not arguing with no water is not a problem. No water is a problem. But if you are living through miracles, then it's not a big problem. If God can give you man from heaven, he can give you, and as in the Torah it says, he can give you water from a rock. Correct? If I didn't have all these miracles, then I'll say, how in the world I'm going to have water? But if I have man from heaven, and I have quail falling down, and I have the clouds of glory, I have on and on and on, what is a big deal for God to give another miracle, which he did, that you're going to have you're going to have water from a rock. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. You got a problem. It's a great problem. It's an important problem. There's no water. We can't live without water. Well, call to God. Go to God. That's all you got to do instead of complaining, instead of threatening, instead of saying, let's go back to Egypt, instead of saying, as they said, is God in our midst? How can a Jewish people say, is God in our midst? Like, how is it possible?
Who's doing this? Who's the man behind the curtain?
It's unbelievable. It's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
But the truth is that that's why these people were extremely great people. Because great people. Because they understood that there's miracles and there's nature. The Eibishter created does miracles, And the Eibishter created nature. And they wanted to live in a world of nature. Even with all the miracles that the Eibishter showed them, they wanted to live in a natural kind of a world. They know the Eibishter can give water from a rock. If he's giving Mama and Shema, give water from a rock. They didn't want the water from the rock. They wanted natural water. They wanted that they would see God not in a miracle, but in nature.
A thought going through my head.
Yeah.
Isn't Torah equated to water, right?
Yeah, but that's a separate. That's separate. Here we talk about real water.
No.
They needed physical water.
My question is, then, could there be a reason as to why Hashem had it be water when it's?
They're in a desert. There's no water. It's self-understood. There's no water in a desert. You don't have water. There's no natural water in a desert, and that's the problem. And you only can make miraculous water in a desert. You cannot have natural water in a desert. There's no water in a desert. Okay, that's why it's called a desert. So it's a desert, and now they have to live on miracles. They got to live on miracles. They cannot live without a miracle. They cannot eat without a miracle. They cannot drink without a miracle. They cannot survive without a miracle. Here the Jewish people said, we don't want a miracle. We want natural water, which they did not get. They got it on a miracle. Right? No stone gives out water. This doesn't happen. Only the Eibishter, only God can bring water out of a stone, which happened. So they had, that's why the Torah says that it was Refidim. Their struggle was Hayesh Hashem b'keben. He called the place Masa and Meriva, due to the quarrel of the Jewish people, due to their testing God, saying, is God amongst us or not? They were living in the miraculous world and in the natural world. They were living in two polar, strong forces of the world. You have to, if you understand what was going on in the desert, at that time, we can understand all the journey of the desert, the Jewish people in the desert, which is in Bamidbar later on. But we see already in this week's Parsha, the journey. We see the polar opposites in this journey. That on one hand, they were extremely in a miraculous mode, and on the other hand, they were extremely in a very mundane physical reality, and in such a way that they can even ask the question, is God over here? Do we want that we have to, so to say, live with God every moment of our lives? Can we live in a natural state?
Rabbi,
Yes.
the word Refidim in Hebrew is Rafa. It's
Right.
like
They weakened. They got weakened. They said, why do we? David just says, I'm going to give you all these miracles for one reason, to see if you trust me. Why do we need to trust God? Let's go to the natural kind of world. It's natural. David to put the world in a natural kind of sequence, and then everything works naturally. Right? Is the Abish against nature? No. The Abish loves nature. The proof is that the world runs naturally. The Gemara says that a person should say, "Ain't saying chanas." I don't want to rely on miracles. I want to rely on a normal way of life. Why do I need to live on miracles? The Jewish people in the desert were living a life of two opposites. Two opposites. The concept of miracles, which trust me, nobody's, and especially in this week's Parsha, that the Gemara says the miracles that the Jewish people saw at the crossing of the sea, even the greatest prophets didn't see. So they were living in a world of miracles. Saw God's way of above nature, totally supernatural, in a supernatural kind of an environment. And they said, we want to live in a natural environment. You're right, God can give us a miracle or a rock. We don't want that. We want to be natural. Their nature was pushing them. The natural side was extremely strong. The Eibishter makes in every situation a yin and a yang, so to say, the positive and negative. If God would show you a miracle, and we see that openly, a yin and a yang, you never heard that expression? A plus and a minus. You never heard that? You haven't been in China. My father comes from China. So a plus and a minus. So just because you have spirituality doesn't mean you have the struggle. The opposite, the polar opposite. What is the polar opposite of miracles? Is nature. True, raw nature. And that was pulling them. And now you can understand what pulled them entirely in the desert. Because these all miracles, majority of miracles that I mentioned, happened throughout the 40 years of journey in the desert. That's why they didn't like the man. They said, we don't want the man. Why wouldn't you want the man? You're getting food from heaven. It has every taste you want. I want a tomato to taste like a tomato. I want steak and chicken to taste different. I don't want a thing that I have to think of this. I want the taste of chicken, or the taste of a steak, or the taste of a tomato, or the taste of cucumber. And that's why they say we remember the cucumbers and the tomatoes and the leeks that was in Egypt. You know, a leek was a leek, and a tomato was a tomato, and a cucumber was a cucumber. That's the way the Eibishter created the world. What's wrong with that kind of a life?
Judaism's obsessed with food, you know.
Yeah, 100%. We're all obsessed with food because you cannot live without it. Just like you can't live without food, you can't live without Judaism. So look at what Rab Levi says, and the Medrash says, Rab Levi in text number 9. Rab Levi said, what is it like? A son riding on the father's shoulders. He saw something he desired. He said, can you get it for me? Actually, the Medrash says, get it for me. And his father got it for him. This happened once, twice, 3 times. The son saw a man and said, have you seen my father? He's carrying him on his shoulders. The father said, you ride on my shoulders. I give you everything you ask for. And you say, have you seen my father? What do you think? You got everything on yourself? I gave you everything. The father let the son down. And what happened was the dog came and bit him. That's the feed him. They dropped God for a minute. They said, let's go. We want to live a natural life. So as Israel left Egypt, the clouds of glory surrounded them. They asked for bread. God brought bread from heaven. They said, and God rained down a mountain and manna to them to eat, rain from the heaven. He gave them. They asked for meat. He sent quail. They requested meat and he brought quail. So it says he brought them for what they desired. He provided them all their needs. As it says, and they say, is God amongst us? Where is God amongst us? God said to them, if this is what you think, my dog, Amalek, is going to come and bite you. Therefore, Amalek came. That's the. So the Rebbe said, now you understand Moshe Rabbeinu's response. Moshe Rabbeinu, for a moment, said, okay, you want to go the natural way, non-miraculously. Okay. Let me turn to Yeshua. We're having a problem. Amalek is coming. We're going to war, right? We're living in miracles. Where's Amalek come? We're living in miracles. The whole Pharaoh fell apart. Everything is falling apart. When they're singing the song of Os Yasher, they're singing that everybody is falling apart. All the nations, Amen, Moav, Canaan, they're all Namoigu, they're all like falling away. Everything is falling away. All the nations of the world are running for their life. The Jewish people say, "Oh, where is God?" Boom, Amalek comes. Not a minute later, Amalek is at their doorstep. Amalek is coming out together. So, Moshe Rabbeinu says, let's go the natural way. That's what you're demanding. Let's go the natural way. What's the natural way? I'm not going out to it. I'm 80 years old. Let me turn to the guy that's younger than me. I'm going to turn to Yeshua. How old is Yeshua at that time? There's a big machlekes. You see in text number 10a and 10b. The Medrash Al-Kutuveni says at the time of war Amalek, Yeshua was 57 years old. In the Rabbi Chil, Seder Hadoros, text number T, the Seder Hadoros is the order of the generations written by Rabbi Chil Hilleprin in the 1600s. He wrote Yeshua was 42 years old. He was born in the year 2406. And the verse of Moshe deputy Yeshua was a lad. So he was a young guy when he started with Moshe, because Rabbi Abim Ben Ezra comments that he was 56 years old. Okay. He was under 60. Now whatever age you want to say, 57, 56, 42. He was not an 80-year-old guy. And therefore, that's the right age. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, but Moshe Rabbeinu, self-understood, knows that you don't only win a war through natural ways. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu put his hands up. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, I will do the spiritual. You'll go the natural. I'll do the spiritual. And together, we'll win this war. That's why it's brought down. Text number 11. And his hands were steady. His two hands are referred to as one, standing firm in prayer. This is why the word he and Amunah are a singular form. So while they were fighting a natural war, Moshe Rabbeinu was fighting a spiritual war, and together, as long as he kept his hands up, he kept it steady as one concept, they were winning. As he got heavier to him, he struggled with these two things. It brought about a negative response.
Well, why does Rashi criticize Moshe Rabbeinu?
Oh, very good question. Very good question. That's where you're going to end this class. Why? So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do wrong? Why was he hurt? That his hand became heavy because he didn't go out to war. He, in essence, responded to the Jews, to their request. They requested, where's water? He told them, don't come to me. I'm a spiritual guy. I trust in God. You're coming to the wrong guy. You have a problem with the issue, go to God. Because I believe in miracles, and I live in a world of miracles. So I have no problem. I know that there's going to be water coming by hook or by crook. You want to go a natural way? I don't know if you have to go to the Eibishter. And God in essence responds not the way they wanted. God gives them an unnatural response, a miracle again. There's water through the rock. It's a miracle again. So the question is, what was wrong with Moshe Rabbeinu's response? What was wrong? Why was he punished in essence? That Rashi criticized him, like you said, that he was nisrashel. He decided to walk away from the mitzvah, and that's why his hand suddenly became heavy. The Rebbe answers as follows in text number 12. And he answered that Moshe Rabbeinu overthought the issue. To God, Moshe Rabbeinu overthought the issue. And the truth is, this is the beauty of what the Rebbe wants to bring out. God, however, counted this as some sort of shirking of a mitzvah. God felt that Moshe Rabbeinu, you missed the boat. You missed something over here. You overcalculated the issue. There's the Jewish people's issue, and there's your issue. I dealt with the Jewish people. I did what I did. And now the question is, why didn't you go out to war? And in your calculation, you didn't have to. And that was wrong. When foreign nations attacked the Jewish people, and this is true even prior to the giving of the Torah, right? Because Amalek came before the giving of the Torah. There's a mitzvah, indeed a genuinely great mitzvah, to go out to battle and protect the Jewish people. And that was his mistake. There's war, you don't ask any questions, you go to war. You're Moshe Rabbeinu, you're 80 years old, all good reasons. I was not looking for a natural response by you.
So you gotta go through the motions, even though Hashem,
Go out to war.
Hashem's gonna make sure that you win.
Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have a doubt that Hashem's going to make sure they're going to win. He wasn't in doubt that was not his doubt, and therefore he should have gone out to war.
Yeah, and it answers my question. It says because there was no explicit command from God to do so. So it's not in the Torah that he asked him to do
It
it.
doesn't make a difference. So there's no exclusive command. But when a Jew, when a nation comes to attack a Jew, you go out to war. You don't ask any questions. You go out to war. Don't become a Moshe Rabbeinu that does, you have a good reason why you're not going to go out to war. That's not the response. That's it, indeed, a genuine great mitzvah to go out to battle and protect the Jewish people. This must be done without overthinking or great calculations. Even in a scenario such as this, where there's no explicit command from God to do so, it doesn't make a difference. God doesn't have to command you to do what is right when there's a situation going on. So when Amalek comes to fight against the Jews, Moshe Rabbeinu should have gone out to war. That's it. End of story. And this war with Amalek is in a very important war of the Jewish nation. And we know that it's a very important war because God says, I have this is not this week's Parsha. God says, I have a war with Amalek. Oh no, I'm sorry, this week's Parsha also, because there's two Amalek stories. I mean, in the Torah, one in Beshalach and one in Bamidbar. It says that the war with God says, again, my war with God against Amalek is from generation to generation. The war with Amalek has not ended with Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The war with Amalek goes from generation. What's the war with Amalek? What is the war with Amalek from generation to generation? No, not true. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, because we don't know if that's Amalek. Amalek is numerical value equals to the word safek, doubt. That happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. It was a moment of doubt. That was his mistake. In which turn is equal to the word mar, bitter. The meaning here is that Amalek instigates doubt concerning belief in God and the sanctity of the Torah. That is the Amalek. Any doubt that a Jewish person has, that's the Amalek. That's the biggest war that God has from generation to generation, is a Jewish person's doubt. That's why we have assimilation and we have everything that's going on in the Jewish world, is doubt. We're in doubt. And you might say we have the right to be in doubt, and we can give all the excuses to be in doubt. Doesn't change the fact that when we are in doubt, we have problems. If we're not in doubt, so when the Jewish nation is in doubt, who should go out to war? When the Jewish people are in doubt, there's Amalek. What was Amalek? Amalek had one objective. The truth is that Amalek won the war in a way. And that's what the nations of the world, they come to bring Jews are not so special. The Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim. They were Biyad Rama. They were marching. As I said before, all the nations of the world were melting in front of them. Comes Amalek and says, relax. Relax. Oh, you'll see, I'll go out to war with them. Right? Nobody had the chutzpah, the capability to go out to war with the Jewish people. Comes Amalek and says, I can do it. That put doubt. That created a moment of doubt. That you can go out to war against the Jews. You can have a moment of doubt that you can, chas v'shalom, take over the situation. That doubt has been generation to generation. So that's why the Torah says in text number 14, Deuteronomy, I said before Numbers, it's in Deuteronomy, which talks again about the remembrance of Amalek. Text number 14:8. It says over there, remember what Amalek did to you on the way upon your exodus from Egypt. He encountered you on the way and he attacked from behind you. All the stragglers behind you when you were faint and weary and you did not fear God. Now that's an interesting expression. Amalek attacked the stragglers. Who was he attacking? Let me attack the stragglers that were behind you. What is it? What is the Torah talking about? What is the Torah talking about, these stragglers? Who are these stragglers? Well, you should know. The Jewish people were surrounded by a cloud of glory around all their sides. Amalek could not attack the Jews if he even wanted to, because the Jews were protected. That was one of the miracles, the clouds of glory that surrounded them in the desert. So how can Amalek attack the Jews? He couldn't get into the cloud. But there were stragglers. There were Jews out of the cloud. There was Jews out of the cloud. There was a tribe, big tribe that didn't want to give up their idols. They were traveling out of the cloud. And Amalek, again, the Jewish people, when they traveled in the desert, they were surrounded by a cloud. They were done for protection. They had a cloud, a physical cloud. You couldn't get into the cloud. So how's Amalek coming to attacking the Jews? Was he attacking a cloud? He can't get through the cloud. So how is he attacking the Jews? That's what the verse says. He's attacking the stragglers. Who are the stragglers? Those Jews who didn't want to give up their idols. They simply didn't want to give up their idols. They didn't believe that they could. They were struggling with their belief. They were out of the cloud. So all the stragglers, Rashi says, all the stragglers behind you, those lacking strength due to their sins, a protective cloud left them. They were out of the cloud. So that means that Moshe Rabbeinu and Yeshua and the Jews in the cloud, seeing the Amalek coming to attack the Jews out of the cloud, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? We're going to go fight out of the cloud. Say he loved. Say, that's what he says. Say, go out and fight with Amalek. You have to go out of the cloud. Amalek cannot attack you in the cloud. You got to go out of the cloud.
I'm paying for like a cloud to save my photos.
What?
They have a cloud. They sell you a cloud that you can have more memory in your phone. You don't know what I'm talking about?
Same. I know what you're talking about. But that's in the cloud. Over here, we're talking about the cloud of glory that surrounded the Jewish people. So here we're talking about Jews, like a tribe of Dan, that didn't give up their idol. Why would you care for them? Let them fight them themselves. Right? You don't believe. You're non-believers. You're sinners. Okay, maybe they deserve to get a bissel, get a little of your taste of your own medicine. Go fight the war yourself. Oh, that's even more the beautiful. You see that? Even God didn't command them to go to fight with Amalek. Right? That's even more beautiful. God doesn't command Moshe Rabbeinu to fight Amalek. Moshe Rabbeinu sees Amalek coming to attack Jews out of the cloud. He tells the Yeshua, get your guys, we're going out of the cloud. The negative is, God says, what do you mean tell Yeshua? You should go out of the cloud yourself. Why don't you go out of the cloud yourself? Great idea. Even though they are not such sinners of Jews, you go out and fight for them out of the cloud. It's out of protection. Now you're on your own. You're fighting the war on your own. You should have gone on yourself. And that's why in text number 15, Abdavid Siegel, Tzuri Zav, he writes, it's a mitzvah for the giants of Israel to take action. Why is it always on the other Jews to take action? When there's a war, when there's struggle, when you're talking about people that are out of the cloud. Moshe Rabbeinu sends Yeshua, go yourself. Simply them, the greatest of Israel, so that the actions may teach the public the proper course about that. When a Jew is in a situation, go out of the cloud. Go out of your cloud. You might think you're holier than them. You might think you're greater than them, and maybe you are. But when the Jewish people, when a Jew that's out of the cloud, is in a situation where he needs to be saved, go out of the cloud. Go yourself. So the Rebbe ends off in text number 16. It's not enough to participate spiritually in every generation war with Amalek. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. He picked up his hand, he was praying. Wonderful. We can't satisfy ourselves by reciting chapters of Psalms as a prayer that others come closer to Yiddishkeit. Even though this is necessarily unimportant. You're right. There's nothing better than prayer. And nothing more important than prayer. It is also insufficient to send messengers to reach your fellow Jew, go out of the cloud, and go out and go help another Jew. Instead, we must personally go out and do whatever is necessary to protect our fellow Jew. That's why, that's the lesson. Moshe Rabbeinu, Taka did unbelievable. He sent Yeshua. He said he got up and prayed. And his prayers helped. We know that his prayers help. But nevertheless, God says, it's all wonderful. But when a Jew is in tzar, when a Jew is lost, when there's a Jew, even though he's out of the cloud, Moshe Rabbeinu himself should have gone with Yeshua and with the Jews and went out the cloud and fought with Amalek. And that's the lesson. When there's a Jew that's in danger, it's wonderful prayer, it's needed prayer. We all should pray, but we all should also go out of the cloud, go out and fight, go out and get involved. So we're not talking about the war, it's self-understood, or not always in every war. We're talking about the war of Yiddishkeit, that we all need to go out and fight this war, the spiritual war, and elevate Jews, reach out to Jews. It's not the obligation of this organization, that organization. It's an obligation of every single one of us to go out of our cloud, to go out of our comfort place and reach out to the Jew that's out of this cloud and bring him back to Yiddishkeit. And that's the beauty of the Machamas Hashem Ba'amalek, that the war with Amalek from generation to generation. That completes the Sikha of today. What a beautiful Sikha.
Thank you, Rabbi.